This is the TyePod, hosted by your friendly neighborhood PhD.
All right. Well, hi, everybody. It's another edition of the TyePod, and today I'm joined by Maisie Soetantyo, who is founder of two different platforms. She is a founder of Guiding Extraordinary Minds and also Autism Career Pathways, and we'll talk a little bit more about that, I'm sure, as we go through our conversation here. But thanks so much for joining me.
Of course. Thank you for having me, Ty.
Absolutely.
Yep.
So just starting off, if you want to give just a brief introduction of kind of your journey and what your involvement is with those two platforms, and yeah, then we can get into some more specific questions.
My professional journey, I have been working with autistic individuals, autistic people, for over 30 years. It's actually almost like it's a topic that's very close to my heart, even before I received my diagnosis, because I just loved working with kids. And when I was at UCLA over 30 years ago, I just found autistic kids, and that I was involved in. I work in a classroom with many little kids, three years old, who are diagnosed with various neurodevelopmental conditions. So, I mean, I love working with little people, little kids, and I just fell in love with this population. And I started at working as a behaviorist at UCLA with the founder of Applied Behavioral Analysis. And then I shifted gear to work with families, supporting them doing relationship-based program, I guess, training. And I watch my autistic clients, grew up, and some of them managed to, with a lot of help, to get college degrees, and they still couldn't even get a summer job working at Domino's, for example.
Wow.
And autistic people many of them have a specific food preferences because of the sensory differences, and definitely pizza or pasta. It's like I consider them the expert because they know how to make those selective type of dishes, cuisine.
Well, those are two of my favorites.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, to me, it was a very rude awakening for me, because I've watched my clients, and they're like my own kids, because I've watched them grew up and struggled, and I've always been part of their team. And to see that the community and the world, they don't know what to do with autistic humans, right? So that's why I created Guiding Extraordinary Minds, or GEM for short. That's our new LLC. And the goal is to be a platform that's autistic created, neurodivergent created. And in the long run, I would like to provide courses and recordings for parents, for autistic people, and for people, their team of caregivers, as well as educators and workplaces, whoever is curious to want to learn more how to support disabled neurodivergent people. So at any point in their journey, I hope that they should be able to find affirming resources created by us, right? So that's the GEM platform. And the Autism Career Pathways is a nonprofit here, and our mission is to educate our community and workplaces so that they can learn how to be neurodivergent friendlier workspaces. And also maybe someday be able to, like, again, learn about how do we, if we were to hire someone disabled or someone neurodivergent, what does that look like within our, cafe or library or bookstore, right? So that's why I created ACP, Autism Career Pathways, because, neurodivergent people, especially people who are more impacted by their conditions, they have work all their lives. And to me, it's really heartbreaking when they become adults, young adults, and they have aspirations to work, and they can't.
Those opportunities are just severely limited. Yeah.
That's right. They're very minimal opportunities. Or if they have their own, like, small business making things, it's hard without the world knowing that these merchandise, these wonderful, it's here,
Right.
So that's why I created the two platforms.
Wow, that's really, both sound really great. I think that's so needed, how you kind of come in from any point, in their lives, as they're dealing with that, and their family as well, and try to, navigate it, especially I mean, when they get to adulthood and want and need opportunities,
Yeah.
you know, it seems like such a limiting factor, you know, on that.
Yeah.
But have you noticed, you know, in your years doing this type of work, has it changed for the better at all, or is it just still kind of in the same place as far as awareness and you know, willingness to, you know, hire?
Yeah. I think specifically to autism,
Mhm.
I think that they're more information, like the good kind of information
Mhm.
because of social media. Although, you know, I was trained in a deficit-based, you know, method,
Mhm.
and I was able to shift, of course, to just I'm a very curious person. That's the best thing about being an autistic person. So I want to continue to learn. Uh, so I think it's trending the right way, but it's still slow moving
Right.
because there's still just fights. Like, for example, autistic people in my country, I was born and raised in Indonesia. In
Mhm.
Indonesia, you cannot find social media accounts
So there's really
with
nothing there to go to for help or sharing common
right.
stories.
Well,
Yeah.
they can't openly say that I'm autistic
Oh,
or
okay.
I'm, you know, and because it's not safe to be publicly so open about your neurodivergence because you're already bullied. You know, you
Yeah.
go to school, you go to college, you're already bullied because you need help, and people don't understand that because,
Right.
you know, especially people like me. Um, my difficulties, my challenges, you know, as a student, as a learner, you can't see that, you know?
Right. Right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I think society in general just still has such a problem, you know,
Right.
understanding and accepting that. And, you know, that in turn has to make it worse because, you know, as the people that are affected go through, I mean, they're encouraged to sweep that under the rug and ignore that side of them. And it has to make it, you know, even more isolating and difficult, I think.
Yeah. Everything is very ableist based
Yeah.
in my country or in Asia in general, because in Asia, people tend to very much focus on academic performance. That's very common, right? Korea, Japan, Singapore, they're known to, I mean, you're judged by how well you do at school.
Right. There's that like academic
Very
success and
much. Yeah.
grade-based approach. Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Yeah. And on top of that, also, if you're also gendered on top of that, right? So if you're autistic and you're a girl, you know, people just say, oh, that's okay, just let her stay at home. You don't have to leave the house. And
It's
you
like
know,
intersecting layers of,
yeah,
you know,
yeah,
discrimination,
correct,
really. Yeah.
correct. You know, in the Western world, there's still some of that, of course, going on because
Sure.
you know, intersectionality in autism, you know, many autistic people are also under the umbrella of the LGBTQ plus, you know, many gender diverse autistic people. You know, that adds another layer of complexity.
Right.
Right.
And there's
So
that just that expectation, I think, too, that, you know, that it, like if you're functioning, quote unquote, you know, at a normal level, it's fine. But then if there's any difference or
yeah.
any, and I mean, like learning styles are different, like skill sets are different. It doesn't mean one side is inferior, you know. So
Right.
it's frustrating, I think, to see the level of ableism that still
Very
persists,
much,
all those.
very
Yeah.
much so. Yeah, and I mean, I have learning differences. So I have number dyslexia, which is dyscalculia, and I also have auditory processing difficulties. And I was a late reader, so I didn't learn how to read in school doing through traditional methods. But my mom my late mom was the one who actually cracked the code to teach me how to read by just spending extra time with me and taking care, just taking me to work and just sharing her interests and
That
what she
family
was good
support
at.
system
Yeah.
is
Yes.
everything, it seems
Yeah.
like.
So I think real world experiences are so important when you have a family member who's neurodivergent, because that's what my parents did to me.
Right.
Right. So I have multiple people who are neurodivergent in my family, and my mom's youngest sister is a woman with Down syndrome, not minimally speaking Down syndrome. So maybe that's why, in my situation, I was raised in a little bit differently as compared to other Asian families with a neurodivergent family member, because my mom kind of knows how to be intuitive when someone doesn't fit the norm, you know. So yeah.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. You know, having people that are aware and that understand all the underlying things going forward, it just when you have
Yeah.
that support system, it just it's so liberating and helps you just
Yeah.
navigate these things, you know. And
Yeah.
I think about even just any type of disability in general, people that aren't aware or they don't maybe have a family member that's affected, you know, it's hard for them to understand, and it's
Yeah.
even hard to explain it to them when they
Right.
haven't been around it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, for sure. And I think social media representations of autism and autistic people, um, we are still being misrepresented.
Mm,
I mean, we're still tokens, and what you
yeah.
see on TV, it's still glorified,
Yeah.
you know. And I think if I were a parent of a newly diagnosed an autistic child,
Mhm.
then I would go to Google, what is autism? You know, it's very
Yeah.
scary because you're actually going to be led to deficit-based
Right.
information.
And
That's the standard.
it's gonna
That's the
compound
standard.
everything else that I mean, it's already
Yeah,
difficult and it's not gonna help.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
frustrating, you know, because I've seen social media be extremely empowering at
Right.
finding community and connections, but then you know, there's always that other side about
Mhm.
misinformation and, you know, continued stigma, I think. And I don't
Mhm.
know, in
Mhm.
your experience, is that something that can be navigated, or is it like maybe try a different route altogether, like you said, just looking up maybe online or
No, I think it's uh, as as a parent, you always have to trust your gut instinct,
Mm,
you know. And when you have a newly diagnosed child, there's so much information online and from your uh, doctor or
mhm,
clinicians who are involved in that early
mm,
diagnosis process, right? And they are most likely to also come from that deficit
mm,
mindset. The fix it
mm.
mindset is another word for it.
Something's wrong, right?
Yeah, like
Yeah.
you gotta quickly do ABCD early intervention type of
Mm,
programming, because otherwise, if you wait until the child's 5, then this kid's not gonna learn,
mm.
and whatever, you know.
There's that list of like, you know, rigid medical like
Right.
procedures or
A
something.
list,
Yeah.
like you'll have 50 pages of report,
Oh my gosh.
and all the language, used in there, the descriptions are all going to say can't,
Mm,
isn't,
mm.
can't, won't, and so on. And
It's
that's
approaching it
quite
from lack as
right,
opposed to what's the strength. Yeah.
right. Because in order to learn about the strength, you have to do a lot of observation. You have to commit to it,
Right.
right? Because in the clinic setting, we all know if we're being tested. It's if you're looking for performance
Mm,
in tests that were actually designed for neurotypical kids.
mm.
It's not for
Yeah.
autistic kids anyways. It doesn't, all
Right.
these 50 pages report, it's nothing. It's not going
Does
to
no
help
help. Right.
you. It's not a good indication of the future. It's nothing.
And
But
that's just gonna like, I mean, it's gonna accelerate, you know,
Mhm.
problems. I feel like negative results going
Absolutely.
through that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think it's very scary that there are so many uh, medical professionals with long waiting lists
Hmm.
who think that, oh, I'm very experienced in autism. I don't have to. I'm the best there is. I have a
Of
long waiting
course.
list,
Right.
right?
Right.
You don't challenge what I tell you.
Like
If you're going to
it's the
challenge me,
yeah.
you're out
Yeah, it's the
next,
law, right?
right?
Like whatever they say is what you follow. And you
Exactly.
know, that's another thing that I feel like is just ingrained in medicine and health everywhere with
Right.
every condition. You know, it's like,
You're
and,
trained that way.
and even as a kid, like when I would go
Yeah.
to doctor's
Right.
appointments, I would be like, well, they know they have the answer. Why do I need to question or, you know, not
Well,
agree?
right.
And
That's right. Because you go to
yeah,
them seeking expertise and new
exactly.
information, right? So if there are parents of a newly diagnosed neurodivergent children listening to your podcast,
Mhm.
I would say trust your gut instinct.
Right.
That report, the initial report, is going to send you in a crisis mindset
Absolutely.
immediately because you don't understand these jargon. But guess what? That clinician also doesn't know your family
That's very true.
situation.
It's very true.
That is a stranger to your kid,
Well, right, and like
right?
the kid and their parents, you know, like they're the experts on their
That's right.
situation and what works for them or doesn't, you know, and I find it when I do see a doctor that is more conversational and like we're on an equal footing just trying to solve problems,
Mhm.
that's the successful route as compared to just giving you, you know,
Yeah.
you're going to try X,
Yeah.
Y, and Z, and that's going to fix it. And if not, then, well, you just,
Yeah.
that's all we can
Yeah.
do, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, many behaviors of autistic kids
Mhm.
that are considered problematic, it's actually not really problematic if you understand autistic language or
Mhm.
autistic culture,
Mhm.
right? Because if you're parents and you have an autistic child, it's almost like you know, this kid doesn't come with a manual
Mhm.
for the parents to understand what is it, how does it feel living as an autistic person in
Right.
this world that's just not designed for an autistic brain, right? So
Right.
autistic people are sensory sensitive. We perceive sensory information in a different way, right?
Mhm.
So that is the problem. You have parents who only understands or you know, just neurotypical manual,
Mhm.
right? The only thing that they know what to do is was based on how they were raised.
Mhm.
Then they have an autistic baby who didn't come with a manual, right? And then all these misinformation from, you know,
Multiplied.
clinicians, speech therapists, all these well-intentioned professionals
Mhm.
who thought, well, I know what I'm doing. You know, I'm trained to do this.
Right.
Right.
And they just fall back on that training, and that, you know, that's, I guess in some sense they're just so comfortable with it too that they don't stop
Yes.
to realize, well, maybe it's not quite right, or we should
Yeah.
change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. It's, you know, when I always say when you are serving a human being, you also have to be human yourself first. You know, you're
That's so
not a
great.
robot.
Yeah.
You know, this person in front of you, they really deserve you know, opportunities for you to learn, you know. So whether it's a teacher and a student or a business owner and an autistic employee or a parent and a child, those pairings, you know, benefits both ways.
Yeah.
Like both persons benefit
Right.
from it, right?
Right.
And I think that's never talked about when I was at UCLA, how to build connections, how to build relationship, right? Right. So, you know, I think I would say to parents, learn from autistic people.
That's exactly, I was going to bring that up.
Yeah,
You know, when you have autistic people that get to the level where they
That's the
can give
plus.
advice and
Yeah.
they have the
Yeah.
experience, I
Yeah.
mean, that's just going to
Yeah.
be so, I think,
Yeah.
powerful to moving forward with it.
Yeah.
When you were working with the smaller kids, was that like in a preschool or kindergarten type setting, or what was that like?
Yeah, like preschool, sometimes younger
Okay.
than preschool age kids. You know, when I was doing behavioral therapy, it was like we were prescribed the program by the supervisors. So each client has a case supervisor, and then the therapists, people like me, UCLA students, probably psychology students. So we were trained to follow the program, the formula, right? Of course, in behavioral intervention, the first thing you do when you have a new autistic client is to train. It's a compliance-based training. We teach them how to sit down, because we were taught, like, well, in order for the person to be able to learn from the adult, this kid has to learn to sit properly. If they're doing hand clapping, we have to take care of that, because otherwise they're not learning, or they have to look at our faces and know that they're not listening or processing information, you know. So that was all that misinformation 30 plus years ago. But the scary thing is people are still doing the same thing. So I thought at that point, it was the best knowledge that I needed to learn, because this is the population that I wanted to continue to serve, right? As a aspiring professional, this is, you know, and I didn't know I was teaching my clients to comply. However, I was also being taught to comply, right?
That's
So
the emphasis.
That chain of order is like that.
Yeah.
It's like, but I think because like I'm autistic, I've always been very good working with autistic people, even though they're non-speaking or minimally speaking, because I get their vibe. We understand.
There's that relatability that's just kind of intrinsic, I think, there.
Right.
Yeah.
And I refuse to give up. So if my client didn't learn the same way, like as like most autistic clients doing the same program, that I would just keep trying different ways. So as a result of that, I was assigned the most difficult cases. You know, people who are more impacted, people who, you know, had aggression, for example. People are just in general more impacted by their conditions.
Right, right.
And but you know, because I just keep training myself, like I keep trying to find.
And it takes that sort of maybe creative side, it seems like, to approach, each particular individual
Yeah,
to help
yeah,
them specifically. Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
That's right.
I'm curious, like, in the classrooms,
Mhm.
it's been a while since I was in elementary, but as far as like engagement with students, they're neurodivergent or have autism, like how is that in the classrooms now? Like, do they have like someone that is like an aid with them at certain
Well, I
times,
think,
or
yeah, it depends on the
the
student.
case? Yeah.
Yeah, it depends on the case.
Yeah.
And I think all parents of autistic kids, young autistic kids, the first thing they want from sending their autistic child to school is being with neurotypical students.
Mhm.
Because, again, misinformation, right? If you put an autistic student with other autistic students, they're going to pick up more behaviors. And that's not the case, right?
Right,
It's just people's readiness for uh, school in general. School's really tough sensory wise.
Right, right.
It just, your nervous system is like being challenged like every minute. You're in that environment because of a noise factor, the pace. There's really nothing that the student can control.
Right.
And when you're autistic or if you have learning challenges, you're just constantly trying to, you use every ounce of energy to just be able to like control yourself, like,
Right.
and being able to process information, it's just very difficult, right?
Right. And then once you graduate high school and look to college, I mean it
That
doesn't change. In
continues.
fact, it
It
probably
doesn't-
becomes much more
It doesn't
complicated.
change. Yeah, because as you get older, the expectations are higher.
Right.
So of course, autistic people need to stim, to self-regulate. It's a form of energy regulation. Everybody does it a little bit differently. But when you go to college, you still have to control that,
Right.
So, I mean, in the classroom, I think there are few school districts who have learned from autistic people. Like they have actually, they bring in autistic professionals. That's great. A ton of books now written by autistic professionals, autistic occupational
So there's
therapists.
resources out there now that can be used.
Right. So in that sense, I think we're making progress.
Yeah.
We're going to get there. There are, of course, challenges.
Right. Yeah. And in the end, I feel like acceptance in some areas, some places it's improving for the better, but there's still the areas that, there's just not, like if you never have that acceptance, then it's really not going to ever be a full solution, I don't feel like, to changing. Yeah. As far as like at some point with because you were mentioning like procedure, like you were kind of following the guidelines of where you started.
Prescribed, right?
Yeah. And so like, how did you reach a point where you sort of knew that I need to bring this to the table, that we need to consider something different? Like, are there examples of where, maybe you had conversations that led to improvements in that area?
Well, I think I've always been very good at finding a workaround for myself. And I also, as a junior therapist, I always remember how I struggled how to read in the classroom setting. And so I always remember that. So I never want to settle when it comes to my clients. I'm an empath, of course. It's like I have a hard time saying no, because it makes me very good at what I do. But it's also not easy because most people will say, you know what, he's like that because he's autistic. Just move on. You know what I mean? I'm like, no, that's not.
That's not right.
I have to figure out a way to like for this client to be able to learn. It's on me.
Right. And that's another level of pressure and expectation. It seems like, that especially, I mean, you care so much about, obviously from your perspective, but also you see people going through similar things. And I mean, it's just, you want something better, you don't want to settle or just move on.
Yeah. And as you know, doing advocacy work on social media, it's difficult.
Right. And that's a good segue. I was going to ask you what your experience has been with social media as it's kind of evolved. And now it seems like there's 100 platforms and 100 information sources coming from different places. Like how has that experience evolved?
So I decided to come out social media that I'm autistic.
Mhm.
Well, I did it in stages because once I got the diagnosis, of course, I told my husband and my kids,
Mhm.
and I was waving the report. And I told my husband, look, like I got the diagnosis. And he looked at me, he was like, I could have told you. Like a year after we were dating, I could have told you that you're autistic. And I was like, really? You never said anything. And
Yeah.
he said, it's because you were not ready to look at yourself in that light, right? So that was the reason.
Yeah. Okay.
And yeah, but and then I did it with like a few close friends and
Mhm.
colleagues. And then after that, I actually talk to everyone on the phone.
Mhm.
And then on Facebook was one platform where I had kind of like a mix, like high school friends and, like
Combination.
professional.
Yeah.
Yeah, like a mixed bag. So
Mhm.
I did a post and yeah, responses were interesting, like how
Mhm.
people, but and then I just started doing that, like what, this is the fifth, going on to 6 years maybe
Mhm.
of doing the advocacy work. Basically, I no longer have a personal account online. It's all
All dedicated to the
to
professional
just
side.
learning, for me learning from other
Right.
platforms, and for sharing. It's for the community basically,
Mhm.
because I use it to share information and educate the community, and for myself to also to learn.
Mhm.
And I think it's been great because I
Mhm.
created safe places. I don't really have dramas or trolling because I mean, I'm just being very careful,
Right.
as I'm usually the oldest autistic
Mhm.
person in the room. So I try to lead by example and just
Right.
be respectful.
Bringing that level of openness and empathy, from the start, really, as
Correct.
you, yeah,
Yeah. And
yeah,
I also make sure that I amplify people who won't have a voice otherwise, people who
right.
are significantly impacted, or people who communicate very differently.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think that's, one of the, obviously the big strengths of social media and in a positive way is bringing that sort of safe community and safe
Right.
space, because
Yeah.
speaking from experience on, more the side with muscle disease and disabilities on like my wheelchair and everything like that, like there was nobody or very few people who I had direct contact with, really ever until much later into my 30s when I started,
Mhm.
getting into social media. And then all of a sudden it's
Yeah.
like, wow, there's that
Yeah.
relatability. There's that sort of
Yeah.
unspoken
That you can find your
kindness.
tribe now
Exactly,
online.
exactly.
So I love that. I've done like online conferences. I will host it with other autistic
Mhm.
professionals, and we just text each other. Like we don't even meet on Zoom.
Yeah, yeah.
It's pretty incredible. I
You
love
don't
it.
have to fight with the Zoom like to get
I
along. Yeah,
love that.
yeah,
So, yeah, but we have to do it collectively, like, because I can't do it alone, and like replacing ABA is
hmm
it's not really my thing, because compliance, performance driven, it's everywhere,
hmm
especially in America.
Right, right. Yeah,
Right.
definitely to a fault many times. So
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
absolutely. So again, for parents who will be listening to this,
hmm
I think learning from my mom, you set expectations, but
hmm
you set flexible expectations.
Right,
That's
right. And the
very
sooner you can
important.
do that, it seems like everything
That's right. That's
is
right.
better. Right,
Yeah.
right.
And autistic kids also need many, many hours of practicing and learning, and they can only do that when they trust the adult guide,
True.
right? So I
Right.
think home is so incredibly important, where when we talk about inclusion, a lot of times neurodivergent kids, they're not included even at home,
Right. That's a good
because
point to
right,
consider
that's right,
because right,
that's right,
yeah.
right. And then they're important, words connected to disabled neurodivergent people. Self-advocacy is one,
hmm
self-determination is another one. Guess what? You won't have that unless
Unless your
unless
support system offers that. Yeah,
correct,
yeah.
unless you learn to listen to your kid,
Right,
unless you honor what the kid needs.
right.
There will be no self-advocacy if you rely on people who don't even live
hmm
at your house
hmm
to speak on your kid's behalf,
hmm
right?
Right, right.
And to the point when you have like IEP meetings at school, that
hmm
document. What if your kid reads that document?
Good point. That's a
Right?
very good point.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
So It's just
Mm.
that is, I think when I was young, there was none of these
hmm
for my mom, for my parents.
Right, right. Just sort of figuring out what worked and
Correct.
yeah.
Right. So you can do this. So my message
Mhm.
to parents is like, you were chosen to be this young person's parent,
Right.
mom.
And I mean, that's got to be their advocate for at least starting out,
Yes,
and
you got to trust your gut feeling.
right, right.
And the tendency, of course, if you have a kid who got diagnosed, say, at the age of 3, boom, overnight, that this kid is with other people.
Mhm.
Because as a parent, you think, oh my gosh, if I don't outsource to these professionals or follow what's that list of recommendation in the
Mhm.
report, I'm not a good parent.
Right. Right. And so
Right?
I mean, it's a learning curve for the parents as well,
Right.
because starting out, I'm sure many of them have that purely negative,
Mhm.
like, oh, what's wrong? We have to figure out what
They're scared.
the fix is, right? Like you mentioned.
Mhm. We got to
Really,
find, yeah.
it's more about just like you said, instinct and working kind of as a
Yeah.
team with
Yeah.
your child to, find the right thing that works for them.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
What about like self-advocacy for was there a point where you realized that I have to step up and, use my voice to, to change something? Was there a certain point you did that, or was it just kind of an evolution around that too?
Yeah, I think whatever I write on social media,
Mhm.
of course, they all come from me. So if I share something about myself, that's
Mhm.
like my story. I'm an open book because if people ask me, I'll answer.
Mhm.
Right? I don't really talk about my family members because it's their story.
True.
Once in a while, if I share a photo, I'll ask, oh, is it okay if I share this? Is it okay if
Right.
I say that you're neurodivergent? Well, my whole family is a neurodivergent. We have a neurodivergent family.
Mhm.
But I'm just very careful in
Mhm.
terms of doing the self-advocacy online, because to me, self-advocacy means that you recognize that you need help.
Mhm.
You also have to take help, accept help,
Accept
and
help, ask for it. Yeah.
ask for it, and also offer help.
Mhm.
That
Mhm.
is really what a true inclusion is. If I wish that every school, every preschool, every kindergarten, classroom, if they really work hard to model it
Mhm.
and model the right mindset and inclusive mindset and teach kids how to be different together, that being
Right.
different is not what makes you a human being, because you're all different.
Right. Right.
So that the self-advocacy, I just try to lead by example. I make
Mhm.
sure I use declaratives like I and we.
Right.
I'm very careful not to use you shouldn't do that, you should, no, I never want parents of an autistic adult to feel bad because they only
Right.
know about ABA, for example.
Right. I mean,
That's
you're
not-
not wanting it to be like directing them. You're wanting it to be like, here's my experience, and if it can help you in some way, like like
Correct.
it's kind of up to the person that's
Yeah.
getting the content how that
Right.
is applied. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you can't tell people don't do that. Don't do this
Right.
program. It's going to be bad for your kid.
Right.
You can't say that unless you're ready to say, do this instead.
Right.
Here is an example. And
Right.
that takes a lot of social media can be very triggering, as you know, because you just see like everything can be triggering. So
Right. And I mean, like,
yeah.
even it's interesting to think about these algorithms, right? That like tailor
Right.
content towards you. Well, if you go to one type
Yeah.
that's in that negative space, well, it's just going to spiral.
You
where
will
see
be
more.
trapped in there.
Right.
You will be
So
trapped in
it's a
there.
dangerous
Very
situation,
dangerous. I think so too. So I just try to sometimes I don't post for weeks or months just because I don't have the bandwidth, or I feel emotionally drained, or I have something going on with my family. So I just can't, I don't have anything to say.
Right.
And
I mean,
that's
like
okay.
that's like, yeah, that's totally fine, on what.
Yeah.
And in some sense, I mean, that's all individual based too, I think, is what you're comfortable with, what your bandwidth is for things, and to realize that it's okay if it's not the same for everybody, either.
Yeah. And I think for advocates like us, we just have to know we have to reserve our best selves, mental, emotional availability to do what we want to do, because it's easy to get sidetracked, right?
And I really like too your approach with family and everything that's close to your circle, realizing that, well, it may not be for them either, and that's fine, and it's up to you to kind of protect that, that part of space, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. I guess what I would say to parents is just be curious because you have a curious kid.
Right.
Go
And that's a good
into,
thing. Curiosity is
go
very,
into,
yeah,
absolutely. Go into their world. And, I think parents are equipped more than anyone else
true.
to create that safety, emotionally safe home environment.
Mhm.
Like, I'm not a perfect parent, but
Right.
I want my adult kids to be able to come home if
Mhm.
the world's not treating them right? So
Right.
I want them to be street smart
Mhm.
instead of book smart. So I didn't graduate. Everything I did in life was later.
Mhm.
Learning how to drive,
Yeah.
graduate. I couldn't finish my master's until I found an completely online.
Right.
And they were
Well,
still
I mean,
up here.
that's also something I think people get stuck for sure in
Correct.
Western culture. Like, I need to have this established by 30, this by 40, and
Correct.
life just it doesn't work that way, especially if you're neurodivergent, if you have any kind of disability.
Yeah. I would tell parents just throw all of those things that people tell you
Yeah.
and make you anything that makes you feel scared. Just throw it out the window.
Let go of that. Yeah.
Let go of that. Yeah, exactly.
That makes so much sense. And that safe place is so valuable, I think, for people to always have, where they're welcome and comfortable, and and it seems like the more families, parents, kids do these things like multi-generational, it seems like it would benefit them and others, going forward, and having more of a community of just everybody, not one type of person in academics.
Right. Yeah. So if parents, I mean, many autistic kids' parents are also on the spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
So really reframing what autism is and what
that's a big one, I think, because it was always, it seems like it was probably like a binary thing where it was like, well, you have it or you don't, and that's more and more, I think everything is more of a spectrum, right? Like, and that goes back to the uniqueness of the person, right? You don't have this one size fits all explanation.
I mean, neurodivergent people are late bloomers. I like saying that. We have a different developmental trajectories to a different path. Autistic people learn language in a different way than neurotypical people. So if you do speech therapy, but training autistic kids to using what is prescribed for neurotypical kids, can we learn to speak? Yeah, but it's not as effective. It's like, I mean, anybody can learn a foreign language. Sure, you can, but it's not going to be that language that's your like your native language, right? Your native language is your autistic language.
Right.
So
I think that's also, it touches on like adapting too, as like a speech therapist or something, like you need to be, find what works, but then also be willing to expand and maybe learn some new things that work better, That's a powerful way to go, I think.
I mean, for parents, also invest in yourself, for yourself, because the best part of you as a human being is going to help you to be a better parent, not a perfect parent.
Right. Well, perfect is not.
Nobody. But the same goes for professionals or for autistic people. If you feel really, really stuck, just go back and invest in yourself. Be curious, because it's just, it can be very nasty out there,
That's putting it mildly too, I think.
Yes. So all you can do is know how to thrive as an autistic person, because that is your world.
Well, that self-acceptance, I think the quicker that you can find that, it just changes.
Go back to your basic as an autistic person, whatever that may be, because you're going to need that to be able to survive today. That safe zone you create for yourself, that's how you're going to thrive, right? How you hit reset.
Was it I guess you probably found that for like you personally, as you were growing up and everything, that sort of, I guess, what works best for you in your comfort zone and everything, so that I feel like that would be very needed for everybody, for sure.
Well, I think a lot of neurodivergent people have their specific interests or special interests. I think that's really important because a lot of times it's sensory driven. So I know many autistic people who are professional runners. They're athletes because they were born with the need to move, right? They tend to be high energy
Need that level of physical activity to,
Correct.
yeah,
That's how they
yeah.
regulate themselves. So that actually, for parents who have kids like this, that's a big clue. They're going to be excellent. They do really well in nature. They're great athletes. So follow that.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Like that's kind of one of those just passionate things that maybe they enjoy just because it feels good too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Are
my
there
thing,
like outlets for you to kind of
yeah.
escape or get creative, or
Yeah, I
like
was
what are
gonna,
some things?
I was going to tell you that I love sports watching. So my
Okay.
dad introduced me. My dad is autistic. I can say that because my dad and I have many conversations about it. My mom's not here anymore. I wish I could share what we have learned together, right? But my dad introduced me to sports. He introduced me to a few things. One was collecting stamps.
That's a good one.
That did not stick to me.
It
He
didn't
would
stick for you.
no,
Yeah.
because he would bring these boxes of stamps from auctions. And then there are like books that you can use to guide you. So my dad would give me a magnifying glass, and he would tell me, okay, look for these kind of, what's the word for it? Misprints.
Oh, okay. Yep. Looking for the rarity.
Correct, because those are like collector's items. Apparently, this is a thing, and probably still is a thing.
I think so. Well, I mean, like just collecting in general,
like coins, right?
Yeah.
So it just didn't it didn't take on me. So then he introduced me to sports. So I grew up watching Muhammad Ali and all of the badminton players. Indonesia is well known for for badminton and ping pong. So I think over time I realized that when people play sports, especially in group sports, there are a lot of nonverbal communication exchanges. And I became fascinated by it because it kind of deconstruct communication for me.
Yeah.
And today, sports is the universal language. People from all, different cultures, there's always a sport that, that they do together. So it gave me a way to connect with dads, my clients' fathers this way. I still do this with all my clients. We would schedule our meetings around sports events and
That's
games.
The schedule that you have to follow.
Is there a 49er game that day?
Yep.
That kind of thing.
I feel you there.
Yeah. So
and kind of all sports, like, or is there just in particular, are there certain ones that you go more towards now?
So of course I love I think basketball is such a beautiful game because they're like 5 players. So it's not, you can still see their communication, right? The way Stephen Curry looks at, I love to say that, well, Stephen Curry stims all the time, because I always say everyone stims, they do this, and people would always know, oh yeah, he chews on his mouth guards constantly. And stimming is energy regulation. Right. Except when you're autistic, then you get dinged for stimming. But
of course,
if you're Stephen Curry, no one says anything
you don't get dinged if you're winning championships for the Indies.
Correct. Yeah. So I love basketball. I love American football. I love tennis. I would pretty much watch any kind of sports, really.
I'm with you on the basketball and football for sure. Those have been like staples.
Baseball, of course. We have the San Francisco Giants who are doing well. I love Korean pop culture. Don't ask me why Korean. It's just something that I picked up.
Something you're into,
Yeah, so I watch K-drama. I, listen to K-pop. The concerts I've been to, they were like K-pop concerts. So these are the things. So again, for parents, just nurture your kids' special interests. You'll be fine.
Did you get to attend any, or do you attend any sporting events too now? Is that
I've been to a few the Golden State Warriors games here in Chase Center. But I love watching them on TV. I can see better when they're on.
Definitely.
Right?
And you can relax and just, analyze everything, and
Yeah, but it's a big production for me in terms of sports watching or following sports, especially if we make it to the finals or semi. It's a big production because what happens is I will turn on the sports radio just so that I prefer like certain announcer, and that person's usually on a radio, right? And then I will have my screen, but I'll have the volume down. So then
That actually is a good strategy. I might have to try that because there's
should
so much, so many other things that you kind of don't really want to hear from the primary broadcasters.
Yeah. So it's a multisensory experience for me.
Yeah.
So then I'll have another screen, usually my phone, to follow like the game cast. So it's like 3-prong thing for me. And if I have other people watching it, then I'll just use my headset. And I have my phone in my pocket. So I'm like a traveling boombox.
Right, exactly. Well, I mean, you take that to a different level. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
The only part that's hard is when they don't do well and they lose when they get to the big stage, and it's just like,
I know. It's terrible.
Yeah,
terrible.
yeah.
That's what happened to 49ers.
Yeah, I'm with you on my football team.
What's your favorite football team?
Well, I hate to say it's the Cowboys. It was growing up. I've grown. I mean, I like the sport in general so much now that I'm less diehard fan. But at the same time, you still, if you grew up, liking a team, you're like, well, it's kind of disappointed when they lose. But
it's not possible for me to switch teams. I don't
understand
how people switch teams. It's like drinking decaf coffee. It's like, what's the point?
You're right.
What's the point?
Yeah, if you're not a dedicated fan for one, then it's like,
right.
I get that. Yeah, so I don't think I'll ever fully, move on from having one team, but yeah, I try to cope with their lack of, I don't know, whatever it is they're missing right now. Watching the game too, but
sports is fun. It just gives me a reason to open my eyes in the morning.
And it's escape too, right? I mean, you can kind of I find that you kind of get lost in it, maybe in a good way,
Oh yeah. I have a ton of useless information in my head.
Right.
I mean, they're not useless to me.
No, not at all.
But like I know Stephen Curry's favorite snack, food.
Oh, so you're like into like the trivia of the players maybe on the team.
Well, because I listen to sports radio.
Yeah.
And that's how you pick up these useless information.
I mean, but when you find the good shows, I don't know, it's entertaining hearing them debate and talk about everything. And, then I always find it like I'm trying to play like owner or coach and like, this is what I would do to fix the team. And it's going to be better this way. So, but I don't know. It's a lot of fun though. I mean, just having that kind of outlet.
I think I can relate to the human story behind it.
True.
I'm very interested in the coach-players relationship because everything, you go back to the relationship connection. That's why some coaches are great coaches, like Coach Carr.
Yeah, it seems like they, I guess they connect more as people and humans first, and then that leads to the stronger. Yeah.
And that's the same thing, when it comes to therapeutic support or working with professionals. That's the same foundation.
It's that one-on-one relation.
Correct. Right. You want to be seen, you want to be heard, right?
And I think that's important too, to note that it's not always like the first person maybe you meet with isn't necessarily the right fit, so it's like not a bad thing to try,
Of course.
Until there is a fit, and then it's life-changing, it seems like, at that point.
Yeah. And I've been like in same situations when my kids were younger, like I was on the wait list for this professional because I thought it would make sense to do this training, blah, blah, blah. And then when I finally made it to see the person and spent a ton of money, and I'm like, oh, this really sucks because that person is not a good mentor.
Right. And that's, I mean, and you don't want to force yourself to stay like in that.
No, it's just money down the drain.
Right.
So I've been there. Like, this is why it's like, for me, it's become like complete, like a full circle for me as a parent of.
Well, I think that's so great, that you're bringing all of your experience into it to provide some of these things and the resources, because it's, there's so many people I think that need to have, that place to go to really learn in an open way like that. So I really appreciate it and think that's such a great approach that you have with it. But yeah, I guess as a kind of a follow-up, there's so many questions, but one of the, I guess if we kind of wrap up on this one, we might want to follow up conversation at some point, but But yeah, as far as like what you're working on now and where you see kind of your programs going in the future, like what's kind of next in your story for that?
Well, I just recently decided that I need help. I mean, need help putting together the platform, the GEM platform. So I think I'm that's what I'm focusing on, is really putting the resources that I did in the past, editing it and uploading it, basically, without being so critical about it.
Right.
And because it will, maybe it will help someone out there.
Definitely. And I
So,
mean, if it helps one person, it's worth it.
yeah, I'm trying not to be so hard on myself and to just let it go and just
Yeah, not always easy.
It's not always easy. I'm sure you can relate. I think
Definitely, yeah.
that's my focus, is to really build GEM. And I want the platform to offer free resources, of course, for parents and for autistic adults, for workplaces, so I try to make sure I have all these like specific multiple categories that might be like health and well-being, parenting, education, work, career, so
All
that's
the
what I'm
different phases
focusing.
that are involved
Correct.
in life.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
But yeah, just basically making sure. I mean, today we talk a lot about how the foundational pieces are actually very similar, like connections and relationships, and being human and imperfect. It's that is the message, basically.
Right.
You can write your own story, and that's what I want parents to understand. Your kid's story is not your story. Your kid has to write their own story. So that's basically the message.
Yeah. But, I mean, that's such a great mission, right? Is to like find each person to find their own sort of humanness within.
Correct. Yeah. So, usually the courses and our online events, we sell tickets because I need to sustain it. I need to pay myself, although how cheap my tickets. It's like, because I never want any autistic person not to be able to. So we always have to have scholarships, but I'm trying to just get it going on the GEM platform.
Right.
And try
for people finding out and connecting more with you in those platforms. Is Instagram kind of the place to start, or is there a preference for that?
I think Instagram is my main platform.
Okay.
So I run too many Instagram accounts.
I feel you there.
Yeah, so I actually have someone helping me to manage the GEM platform, Guiding Extraordinary Minds. So that's a new one. So if you please follow us, find us over there. My parenting account is the one with my own name.
Okay.
That's for parents and professional, and of course, Autism Career Pathways. It's my most pride and joy, because I was able to really show the world that careers look different for everyone.
Right. Exactly. I love that. Well, I'll definitely put your contact information, how people can get involved. And I sure appreciate it, Maisie, having you on and taking the time to visit with me about.
Of course.